Hi, everybody. My name is Trinity Scott, and this is my presentation on literary heritage, kind of what literary heritage means, and why I think that the Vedlt by Ray Bradbury should be included in our class literature that we read over the year. In the description for our course, the University of Memphis says that literary heritage is an emphasis on works as products of their historical context and as processing shaping human consciousness. So, based on multiple dictionary definitions, literary just kind of means that whatever you're talking about is pertaining to literature. And heritage is a shared experience throughout your generations, or kind of the traditions or practices that you pass down through your lineage, so through the generations. Therefore, I would define literary heritage as a collection of works of literature that invoke emotions that allow them to be relatable to multiple generations throughout their use of events and human emotions that are generally commonplace, therefore we relate to them very easily despite the era. Ray Bradbury was an author who lived 1920 to 2012. He started getting recognition and awards for his work in the 1940s. He was very focused on futuristic settings, and he continued writing up until the early 2000s. The Vedlt was written in 1950 at the height of the traditional American family and the traditional American life. Our textbook defines a veldt as an area of grassy land with scattered trees and shrubs, especially in southern or sub-Sahara Africa. So the Vedlt is a short story in the future that focuses on both mechanical advances and family dynamics. So in this future society, robots essentially do everything for you. They feed your children, they wash your hands, they brush your teeth, they tie your shoes, they clean your house. They do everything for you. There are rooms specifically built to entertain children. The parents, George and Lydia, are starting to become unsettled by their house, partially because they feel as though they should be doing things that have been done for them, but also due to the nursery they had bought for the children. The nursery they had bought for the children was a special room that took the children's thoughts and was able to put them up on the walls and make it kind of like a fantasy world, despite it not being real. However, we then learn later on that if the child wishes it well enough and hard enough, it will become real. So the children normally wish for things that, any child would wish for. They wish for Aladdin, or they wish for Alice in Wonderland, and then they explore Wonderland or things like that. But one day, Lydia becomes very unsettled because she discovers that they have a scene of Africa in their nursery. Not only that, right along the edge of the nursery, there is 2 lions aggressively eating an animal. They can't tell what it is, but it's just some sort of animal, and she hears screams, awful screams from the room that she says sound extremely familiar. So they hire a psychologist to come and say, hey, can you look at the room? Because originally the room was intended to help work through kids' psychological problems. And the psychologist pretty much says, yes, your kids there's something very wrong with them. You need to get this checked out. He says you need to shut off this room immediately. So everything in the house that is mechanical can be turned off. So he said you need to shut off this room immediately, otherwise something bad could happen. However, he then goes into the deeper issues with the family and says that part of the reason that the kids are imagining these things are because they love the room more than their parents. So, because they had been spoiled so much. The parents then say, okay, the psychologist leaves. He says he's going to come back in a couple hours. They turn off everything in the house. The kids are screaming, throwing a fit, pounding on the walls, yelling about how they can't do this to them. Can they please have one more hour in the room? The parents say yes. They let their kids in the room. They go to get dressed to go to the psychologist's office. When they come back, they don't see the kids in the room. So they walk in, and next thing they know, the door shuts behind them. They're trapped in with the lions in Africa. And they realize that the screams that they had heard before in the middle of the night were their own screams. Their children had been planning to murder them all along. So, the Vedlt, I think, should be considered a part of literary heritage because I think how we see the future is very important and very telling of our society. There was an era of steampunk where they thought everything in the future would be powered by steam. Now we're in kind of like a Jetsons-like era, is what I call it, where we just have robots who are going to do everything for us. That's kind of what we think the future is going to be. And throughout all time, there has been kind of a struggle between children and their parents. This is reflected in a lot of literature, but, some of the main ones are going to be Romeo and Juliet, the fight between their parents and what they feel, the Catcher in the Rye, deviance as a teenager and kind of what that means. Carrie, societal pressures and how that can make you more distant and everything in between. Strained parent-child relationships or just issues in parent-child relationships and dreaming of the future or how we imagine the future bond people together and span across generations. And that's what I think makes the Vedlt a worthy inclusion to literary heritage, because it shows the relatability of these shared human experiences that we find as we grow up, and both the future that we are imagining for ourselves. Every time we imagine the future, we always try to make it an idealistic time where things are easier for us. And I think that this really captures that and helps to show that just because it was 50 years ago, or even now it's 70 years ago, it doesn't mean that it doesn't apply to today. So that's why I think it should be included in our course.